And we're going live. And it looks like we are now streaming live on YouTube. I do have a YouTube notification saying that we are going live. And so I think, perfect. All right. Well, I think we're in business. So we'll start getting some folks on soon. Of course, the moment we get on YouTube live is the moment my dog starts barking because she wants to get let out. We are, Mr. Han, we're already up to 5 people watching. So
wow.
That's pretty exciting. Okay, so Mr. Han, we're going to be monitoring, you and I will both be monitoring the chat. And then, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to adjust my settings here, default view. There we go. And I should probably remind everyone, first of all, hello, those of you just joining us. It is 7 p.m. And so we are going to formally begin in just a couple of minutes. Because we weren't able to push a link out in advance, we're going to give students a couple minutes to kind of jump in. In the meantime, Mr. Han, probably not a bad idea if I just went ahead on the chat and I just said, just a reminder, please keep your chat school appropriate and relevant to our study of U.S. history. Alrighty. So I think good. Oh, I wonder. Okay, so now I wonder, again, kind of playing with my settings here because I am not, I have too many identities, Mr. Han.
Oh, no.
I have my personal Google account, and then I have my Heart District Google account. This is what I really want, is I want to log in with my Heart District Google account. Hey, for the 10 of you who are watching, welcome. We are going to give people a couple more minutes. We have 11 people watching right now. So we're going to give folks just a couple more minutes to jump in. And there we go. So we've got Brandon DeVore and we have Alexa. Hello, welcome. And I can now go in as my real self and I will, or as my Heart District self, and I will go ahead and I will officially say that just as a reminder, we want to keep our chat school appropriate and relevant to our study of history. So thank you in advance for that. Allie St. John is on. Hello, Allie. And Dylan, hello to you. Rachel, hello. All right. So, Mr. Han, maybe we give it another minute or two, and then we'll actually go ahead and get started.
Mm-hmm.
I am, in the meantime, I'm going to also get this going on my iPad so I can be seeing, all sorts of everything that's going on here. I will click home and, oh, there's the live. Okay, good. Perfect. This is what I want to. Very good. So we have Rachel. Hello, Rachel, and Chloe. Caitlin Williams, welcome to you too. We are up to a grand total now of Mr. Han of 13 people watching us.
Oh, wow.
Very excited for our exam tomorrow morning at 10:30. Actually, it'll go live at 10:30. And so we're now up to 15 people watching. Mr. Han, I think probably a good time right now to share with all of our students who are watching that the way that I intend to do this is really kind of not very scripted. And, I certainly don't want to go through the entire study guide because I feel like we already did that yesterday, right, Mr. Han? So it seems silly to have to go through that all over again. There were a couple of vocab terms that I think, because I cut you off because it was noon. I cut you off. So maybe, Mr. Han, if you want to pick up on those. And then the only other thing that I really feel like we didn't go over yesterday, at least we didn't touch on it, was the painting. That, I kind of wanted to review the American Progress painting, the John Gast painting.
Yes.
Because the John Gast painting, I know I haven't created those questions yet, but I know I do want to ask at least a couple of questions about the painting. I want to say welcome to Shivani and to Bailey and to Abby. Hello to all of you. So, Mr. Han, what do you think we should do first? Do you want to go over the those remaining vocab terms first, or do you want me to talk about the painting a little bit more?
Sure, we can go over the remaining vocab terms. We've got 1, 2, it looks like 3 of them just remaining, so that shouldn't take no time at all.
Okay, so because we got through mandate. You were just finished talking about mandate
Mm-hmm.
yesterday when I cut
Yes,
you off at 12 noon. So three more. Oh, and Mr. Han, how about if I would you like me to go ahead and how about if I put the slideshow up?
that would be awesome.
I will go ahead and do that for you. All right. So I will not share the window that has the Vincenzo's Pizza menu, which, by the way, we had Vincenzo's Pizza. Want to give while I'm loading the slideshow here. We'll give a shout out to our local businesses. We did have Vincenzo's Pizza tonight in the Ippolito family. Okay, so Mr. Han, I am going to go ahead and scroll down here to nationality, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. Alrighty, so Mr. Han, I think I'm now seeing the. Oh, and by the way, so I see, for example, hello Alexa. Alexa is asking, can you please go over Joseph Smith? And we totally can. But we're going to do a little vocab first, and then we're going to talk about the painting, and then we'll totally go over Joseph Smith and whatever other questions you may have. And hello to Aiden Voiles as well. Mr. Han, right now the floor is yours. Go for it.
All right, so the last, we have 3 vocab terms remaining. The first of which, it looks like we have, sorry if I turned off my video. It turns out that, what was it? It was slowing down for me, and then I got told, hey, turn off your video. It'll help out by a couple of friends of mine in my other classes. So sorry, I got to turn it off for now. But here we go. So the first of the 3 remaining vocab terms, we have nationality. As you can see from the picture we have here, it's just a bunch of people, a whole bunch of flags put on, superimposed on them, on their outlines and such. Judging from the picture, you can probably gander a guess on what nationality means. Excuse me. Sir, if we can go to the next slide. So the definition of nationality is the status of belonging to a particular nation. As of right now, everybody in Everybody in this class, everybody in Mr. Ippolito's History 8 class belongs to a nationality. We are all Americans. We are all Americans because we are here living here in the United States of America. Uh, If you were born in If you were born and lived in another country, say like Mexico, you'd be known as a Mexican. And if you were or another country like Canada, you'd be a Canadian. What was it? Yeah, and so on and so forth. If you take a look, see at the picture here, you have what was it? Yeah, on the top right, you see two people dressed in what appears to be traditional Chinese garb or Chinese outfits. They would be known as Chinese because uh, they were born and live in China. Um, it looks like what was it? Oh yes, the bottom. What was it? The bottom row, second from the right. The two characters that appear to be dressed in they both appear to be wearing dresses. I believe those two are they belong to they belong or they're from the nation of the country of Scotland, and they would be known as their nationality would therefore be Scottish. The man on the right is not wearing a dress; he's actually wearing a kilt. A kilt is let's just say it is the epitome of Scottish clothing. What was it was what represented Scotland way back in the day, and it still does today. You'll see a lot of Scotsmen. During holidays over in Scotland, and sometimes even here in the United States, we have a lot of people of Scottish descent here in the United States that will wear kilts in support of Scotland. So I think that covers the term nationality. Unless anybody has any questions.
I want to jump in for just a moment, Mr. Han, because I wanted
By
to
all
add on
means,
to
sir.
that. Yeah, thank you, because you gave a great definition and examples of nationality. I wanted to just give some context because the term nationality, I'm pretty sure the way that this is used in the context of our class is,
Mhm.
I want to say it was in James K. Polk's State of the Union address, where
Yeah.
he was talking about basically James K. Polk. He is a nationalist, right? So he believes very strongly that Americans are number one, that America is amazing. The United States is an awesome country. Sometimes when you let nationalism go a little bit too far, and some might have said that that his President Polk's nationalism was the reason why he wanted to go to war with Mexico, that he felt that the United States was a superior country, and that Mexico was an inferior country. And so in that particular case, he used his nationalism or his nationality to promote war against Mexico. So I just want to give that little bit of context before we move on to our final term, or our final two terms, insatiable and shedding American blood on American soil. Mr. Han, I should also point out, because we have a couple of students mentioning it, your audio is a little choppy, just like it was yesterday too. So it's not. I can still hear you. And actually, so here I'm gonna just briefly stop the screen share, and I can hear you just fine when we're not doing the screen share. So try talking now.
Hello, can everybody hear me all right? Yes, no, maybe?
I can hear you great now. So I think it's just when we're doing the screen share. I think that's when it's a little bit choppy. I can't explain why. And it's not that you're inaudible. It's just there's just a little choppy. So so if you saw that on the chat, I just wanted to explain. But we can still hear you. Okay, Mr. Han, I'm going to go back to the screen share so we can get to insatiable and my favorite one, shedding American blood on American soil. So we'll go back to insatiable.
Okay, so the term insatiable, if you can take a look at the picture here, you see the northern states in blue and the southern states in yellow. You see the southern states saying that they want to expand. Northern states say, no way, bro, not going to expand. So insatiable, so if we can go to the next slide.
Mm-hmm.
Definition, insatiable is impossible to satisfy. What was it? If you see in the word insatiable, the suffix in, that usually is in the negative connotation. That means it's what was it? It's the excuse me. It's it's in the negative connotation. And then satiable. If you've ever heard the term if you've ever heard and used the term satisfied, I believe it's a derivative of. I believe the word satiable is a derivative of the word satisfied. That means to be. I am honestly forgetting the
enough. You've had enough. You're good.
Yes, enough. And I'm hearing that my audio is choppy again.
That's okay. I can still hear you. Keep going.
Okay, let's get through this. Let's see. So insatiable means impossible to satisfy. So it's not enough. It never will be enough. Here's here from Thesaurus. Here's some couple of synonyms, other words for insatiable. So in the context of our history class, what was it? The term insatiable was used to describe the United States want for more territory. What was it? If you remember from the last unit, President Andrew Jackson had passed the Indian Removal Act, which had removed Native Americans from their ancestral homelands. And then they forced them to move out west towards the Oklahoma Territory, to the modern day Midwest. And what was it? And that was just the first stepping stone. Over time, and as we learned over time, Americans were continuing to expand out westward to try to settle out to the lands that were not really inhabited by other Americans, for farming, for economic reasons, to escape religious, like for the Mormons, to escape religious persecution. The term insatiable ties, what was it? And then eventually, after these areas were settled by these Americans, the government would come. The United States government would try to come along to try to annex these territories, to bring them under American control, and that was what was described as insatiable by many people at the time. The impossibly unable to satisfy quest for territory that the United States was on, to gain more territories, to annex more territories from countries to the west. If that makes any sense. Does anybody have any questions about insatiable?
Mr. Han, you gave a great context for insatiable. That was good
Thank you, sir.
as it relates to, you know, that the idea of manifest destiny, that it was like our appetite could never be satisfied for land. We wanted more and more land. And I think that might have been a criticism, if we're putting this in another context, a criticism that the Northerners would have had of the Southerners was that,
Mhm.
hey, your appetite for land is insatiable. You will never have enough. There was even, we really don't study it in this class, but there was even a movement to try to conquer parts of Central America and the Caribbean as well. There were Americans that did want to go. There was an American by the name of William Walker. He was from the South, maybe from Texas or Alabama, somewhere down the South, and he actually led a campaign to try to conquer Nicaragua. So
Wow.
again, it all kind of feeds into that notion of this insatiable appetite for land on the part of the Southerners, because they wanted more and more land for the institution of slavery. All right, Mr. Han, what I'm going to do, just to kind of help your audio, is I'm going to click share again, and I'm going to reshare this screen. And then once you kind of get into the explanation of our final one, shedding American blood on American soil, then I'll turn the screen sharing off so we can hear you better.
All right, sir. All right, so shedding American blood on American soil was a phrase stated by President James K. Polk in his State of the Union address in 1847, if I'm not mistaken. Let's see if we can go to the next slide, sir.
I got you.
So, like I said, it was President Polk's justification for the Mexican-American War. If you remember, in his what was it? If you remember, when Texas gained its independence, both sides had to agree on a boundary of Texas, because what was it? Mexico certainly didn't want Texas to take more land than they were, than they had. So what was it? But then the problem was with the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo was that the Texans believed that the Texas border was on the Rio Grande, which is Spanish for Big River. But then the Mexicans, they believed that the Texan border was on the Nueces River, which is about further north. Now, on a map, it doesn't seem to be that much big of a difference. But if anybody in here has ever driven across Texas before, it's actually a really big state. I remember driving for 12 hours one time, and I looked at my GPS. I'm like, wait, I'm still in Texas right now. So yes, Texas is very big. It might not look like it on the map, but take my word for it, it really is a very big state. Now, what was it? The problem. Now, see, that was the problem. There was a dispute in the border, both sides claiming one thing or the other. Now, President Polk decided, well, we're just going to say the U.S. border is going to be on the Rio Grande, and then without consulting the Mexican government, and he sent in troops there. Well, the Mexican government didn't really like that. They saw that as a declaration of war, so they sent their own troops in there, and there was a battle. And sadly to say, the American troops, they were killed. So that was what President Polk was saying in his State of the Union message to Congress, when he was saying shedding American blood on American soil. American blood was, yes, indeed spilled, but he kind of fibbed it a little bit by saying it was American soil. It really kind of wasn't. The land was in dispute, and both sides never really agreed to the border, so it was kind of a problem. So many people, including Congressman Abraham Lincoln, future President Abraham Lincoln, he believed that the war was, in fact, to expand slavery, to add another to expand slavery, and by adding more territory to the United States. So he requested that President Polk present evidence to Congress proving that the land that the American blood was spilled on was in fact American territory. Uh, while Congressman Lincoln did present this request to President Polk, though, the evidence was never really quite presented by the president. It kind of went in a little back and forth, like a lot of things do in Congress. Eventually, after about 2 days after the address, Congress did declare war on Mexico, starting the Mexican-American War. So that whole term, shedding blood on American soil, American blood on American soil. Yes, American blood was spilled, but the catch there was it kind of wasn't American soil. It was never really under American control. President Polk just said it was so that we can go to war with Mexico and get more land. Are there any
Unfortunately,
questions?
I was just going to jump in and say that, unfortunately, in the history of the United States, there have been times when we have been, I think most people would agree, very justified in going to war. I feel like World War II is an example of one of those wars where almost all Americans agreed, yes, this is the right thing to do. We were attacked by the Empire of Japan at Pearl Harbor, and the Nazis were bent on dominating large portions of the world, and so I think World War II was one of those like uncontested, of course we should go to war kind of situations. Whereas the Mexican War, it was maybe had a little bit more of a shaky justification for it. Mr. Hahn, I brought up another map here that shows, you were talking about that disputed territory here in green. And so this was the land that Mexico kind of sort of recognized was the independent Republic of Texas. They weren't totally thrilled about it. But then this was all that disputed land that was annexed by the United States in 1845. And so this right in here, this region in between the Rio Grande and the Nueces River, was where President Polk claimed that American blood has been spilled on American soil, but he kind of provoked it to begin with by sending the troops down there in the first place. Okay, Mr. Hahn, I feel like we have gone over, so we've gone through the entire study guide. So here's what I'd like to do, just kind of giving a shout out to all of our students here. I want to go ahead and I want to talk. I want to go ahead and take Alexa's question, because Alexa asked about Joseph Smith. And then if you have any other questions, please throw them in the chat. And then we'll go ahead and Mr. Hahn, I want to take a couple minutes to talk about the painting and then answer whatever other questions students have. So let's talk quickly about Joseph Smith. I'm going to go ahead and actually put our slideshow back up, because I do have a little, I'm going to click through here and find my Joseph Smith. And let me find him, because I've got, here we go. Okay, so I'm going to do a screen share, and I will talk about him and show these pictures at the same time. So Joseph Smith, just as a reminder to everybody, he was the founder of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. It is also referred to as the Mormon Church. The reason why it's called the Mormon Church is because they have a book called the Book of Mormon that, according to their belief, is the story of the time that Jesus spent here in North America. Now, when it comes to belief, and those of you who remember 7th grade history last year, where we talked a lot about beliefs. We learned about Christianity, we learned about Islam, we learned, talk a little about Judaism, Buddhism, Hinduism. We obviously want to be sensitive, and we want to be respectful of people's religious beliefs, of all religious beliefs. However, the other Christians in the United States in the 1840s and 1850s were very unaccepting of the fact that, first of all, that they thought it was an outlandish story that Jesus ever came to North America. They thought that was ridiculous. They did not believe the Mormons when they said that their founder Joseph Smith had found or was given these golden plates by an angel. That's the angel Moroni there. That's in this image right here. And so they also disagreed. So part of the Mormon belief as well was, they wanted to be fruitful and multiply. That's a phrase from the Bible. And so one of the ways that they believed that they could be fruitful and multiply, in other words, have a lot of children, was they thought that by having multiple wives, that would help to kind of, have more pregnancies and make more babies. So other Americans also disagreed with that. And so Joseph Smith was murdered. Let me go into the slideshow here, because I also back further up here, I did mention, we talked about push-pull factors. Here we go. So essentially, after Joseph Smith, the founder of the Mormon Church, was murdered, his successor was Brigham Young. I talked about yesterday how Brigham Young, he has a university in Provo, Utah, that is named after him, Brigham Young University. If you've ever heard of BYU, they're very big in NCAA sports. And so Brigham Young was the leader after that of the Mormons, and he was the one who led them along the Mormon Trail out to the Valley of the Great Salt Lake in what is now Utah. And again, it might seem silly, like, well, wait a minute, other people traveling west, they're going to California, they're, or they're going to Oregon, they're getting this beautiful, farmland, or they're going out to discover gold, or they're going out to the coast. Why would this guy pick the desert? Well, as we talked about yesterday, the reason why he picked the desert was because he knew that nobody else wanted to live there. So these Mormons, this Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, they would be left alone. They would be able to cultivate the land. You can see in this cartoon, which, by the way, I did not create. I can't take credit for this. I got this off of the internet. But they built dams, canals, and irrigation ditches so that they could bring water from the mountains, and they could irrigate their land and basically, turn the desert into an oasis, which is today the communities of Salt Lake City and Provo, Utah. And, today there are, it's a thriving community and a thriving state. And it was thanks to the Mormons who moved there to begin with, who, made kind of nothing out of this desert environment. Okay. So we've had a couple of questions, Mr. Hahn. In the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and turn screen share off right now. So Bailey asks, how many points is the exam and how many questions? So Bailey, I think we're shooting for 30 questions. Mr. Hahn, did you finish putting your questions in the Google Doc? I have not yet.
Not quite yet myself.
Okay, well, that's our homework for tonight. Allie, you are correct. Yes, so 30 questions is our target. Maybe a couple, maybe a couple fewer, maybe a couple more, but we're shooting for right around the 30 number for multiple choice questions. And then Mr. Hahn and I, after we get done with our YouTube live here, we're going to talk about, if we're going to have maybe a short answer question or two. Be prepared for the possibility of a short answer question. Alexa then asks, will there be a Zoom meeting? And also, can we use this YouTube live on the test? You know what? You can use, as I stated previously in Google Classroom, and I think I stated on, where did I put this, Mr. Hahn? Oh, yeah, I posted this in Google Classroom, and then we also talked about it in our YouTube practice earlier today. Let me be very clear to everybody, all 22 people who are watching right now, plus everybody else who's going to hopefully watch this later. You can use notes. You can use the textbook. You can use the internet. You can Google anything you want. You can watch this YouTube video. It's a different kind of exam, right? Because we're under different circumstances. So you can use whatever resources you want. The only thing you can't do is get help from other people. So you cannot, you can't ask your parents or other people in your family to help you with a question. You cannot message your friends. You have to work on this on your own. So you're welcome to do research. You can Google, you can YouTube, whatever you want, but you cannot use other people, talk to other people. Okay, so and then just to be clear, Alexa, you said, will there be a Zoom meeting? So Mr. Hahn and I are going to be on Zoom from 10:30 to noon. The only reason we are there, we are not teaching a lesson. We are not giving you additional work to do. Your only work that you will have tomorrow is to take the exam. We strongly encourage you to take the exam between 10:30 and noon. I think that's the best time to take it, because Mr. Hahn and I will be available in the Zoom call, which we'll push. Your link is already in Google Calendar, and we'll push it out again in Google Classroom. And that is a good time for you to ask questions. If you're working on the test and you're like, I don't understand this question, hopefully our questions are going to be crystal clear. But, just like if you're in a regular classroom, if you have you're stuck on a question, you raise your hand, a teacher walks over and we help you out. Well, if you're taking the test tomorrow night at 9:30 at night, and I'm not going to be on Zoom, and I'm hopefully going to be getting ready to go to sleep, so I'm not going to be able to help you, and that test is going to shut down at 10:30 p.m. So you have from 10:30 a.m. to 10:30 p.m. you have a 12-hour window to go ahead and take the test. So hopefully that makes that clear. So my best advice to you is take the test from 10:30 to noon. That is when Mr. Han and I will be in our Zoom classroom if you need us. And we will also be available via email if you need us. Taylor asks, I think you already said this, but what will the test be on? So the test will be on Manifest Destiny. You have a digital copy of this. Some of you also have the paper copy of this. This is the Manifest Destiny Unit Exam Review Study Guide. This is all the stuff that is going to be on the exam. All of our notes, all of the reading. Mr. Han, I think we determined earlier that the reading is all of chapter 9. Is that correct? Sir. Okay. So 9:1, 9:2, 9:3, and 9:4. Study your notes. Everything that we have shared in this unit, that's what's going to be on the exam. Taylor. Okay, Taylor clarified. What will the platform be? Edulastic. We're going to put it in Edulastic. And then Bailey asks, will there be anything due tomorrow? Just the exam? It is just the exam. And Sophia, you are correct. Yes, it is Edulastic. I've heard good things about Edulastic. We tried it out with a quiz. I think the 9.3, 9.4 quiz was on Edulastic. So yes, so that exam there'll be a 12-hour window. So just take it sometime during that time. And preferably if you can take it during our class period, that's the best time to take it. Okay. No, Taylor, you're good. Don't apologize. It all makes sense now. Okay, Mr. Han, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to jump to that painting because I love this painting. I just need to find where I put my painting. I think.
Yes, sir. If you give me 1 second, sir, I'll be right back.
Yeah, go for it. Go for it. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen one more time. And this is the slideshow, which, by the way, this slideshow here, this is in Google Classroom. I posted it yesterday at Google Classroom. It's also on mrippolito.com. And so these are just a couple more things that I kind of want to point out, some things that were kind of in the reading or maybe kind of in other things that maybe you just did, like you just caught little glimpses here and there. And I just want to make sure that you're really clear on this. So let's go ahead and talk about this really quickly. First of all, I want to talk a little about African Americans. This was in one of the readings and I forget which, it might've been in the textbook, but one of the things that happened was for African American, well, for two main groups, for African Americans and for women, is they got greater opportunity, greater economic opportunity, and a greater opportunity for equality. In other words, the West was an opportunity for people like women and like African Americans who were normally not given full rights, who were normally not given full economic opportunity. They were given greater freedom in the West. I'm not talking about full freedom and full equality, but certainly greater freedom. For example, this photo here on the left is a photo of a free African-American. Again, there was no slavery in California. Slavery was illegal in California. But this is a free African-American who is digging for gold in California. There were greater opportunities for, and we haven't even learned about this yet, but 25% of all of the cowboys in the 1860s, 1870s, 1880s in Texas, in the Kansas, Nebraska territories, in other like cow country, they were African Americans. 25% of cowboys were African American cowboys. There was greater freedom, greater equality, greater economic opportunity for African Americans out west. You see in this photo here in the middle, you've got a couple of African Americans who are working right alongside these white miners. Again, this is in California, and they are mining for gold here. So instead of working for the white miners, they are working right alongside these white miners. One other example, this photo is actually from the early 1900s. This is a man named Captain William T. Shorey. He was African-American. You can see he married an African-American woman. Those are his two children right there. He was a very successful, a very financially successful, very wealthy Californian. One of the, I don't know if he was one of California's first millionaires, but he was definitely very, very wealthy. So there was not only the opportunity to, to just get a job that helped to pay your bills, but also the opportunity in California and out in the West for wealth for African Americans. So I wanted to point that out because I think that's important. Pioneer women, I wanted to point this out as well because, like I said, there is an opportunity for women. You see, these are a couple of women right here out in the West. I believe this particular photo was in the state of Washington, up in the Oregon Territory, or right after it became the state of Washington. A couple of women who are running a cafe and bakery right there. Again, it was much more possible to be a small business owner for a woman in the West than it would have been in a place like New York or Boston or Philadelphia or, someplace out in the East. So, and even African-American women, this is a photo of a Chinese immigrant woman who was a business owner. I don't remember her name, but again, more opportunities for women. And here's part of the reason why. So if you take a look here, I have this chart here where it shows in thousands the population, the distribution, male and female population in California. You check this out in 1840. Now, keep in mind, 1840, California is still a part of Mexico. Roughly 4,000 men, roughly 4,000 women. Again, this is California population in thousands. By 1850, what has changed in those 10 years? What has changed? Anybody? The gold rush happened, right? In 1849. That's what we call them, 49ers. The football team got that name because of the gold rush. Everybody went through San Francisco to get out to the gold fields east of Sacramento. So you can see the big jump. So before, when it was part of Mexico, roughly even distribution of men and women. Starting in 1850, the men, 110,000 men, only 10,000 women. So over a 10-to-1 ratio of men to women. Now, if women have skills that men don't have, like sewing, cleaning, cooking, food preparation, those skills are going to be very, very valuable, right? And so women who move out West have a greater opportunity for economic success because they don't need to be going and mining for gold. They're providing those support services where they can make a lot of money. They're innkeepers, they're tavern owners, they're bakery owners, they're laundry owners, things like that. You can see if you take a look at these numbers here, 1852, 180,000 men to 20,000 women. So that ratio is growing even greater. As we move progressively, you can see 1860, 1870, 1880, by 1900, still far more men than women, 821,000 men to 665,000 women. It will not be until 1950. It's going to take 100 years for the populations to level off, right? Between men and women. And then of course today, well, the latest statistics that I have are from 1970, which that was 50 years ago. But you can see the ratio actually changed. And it's now more women in California than men. Okay. Alexa, I noticed that you said you were having problems logging into Edulastic, and don't worry, Alexa, because I'm going to go ahead and take your exam and just put it on Google Forms. So Alexa, please don't worry about that. All right. Well, Mr. Hahn, have you returned?
Yes, I have, sir.
Okay. Hey, hello.
Hello.
Welcome back. Good to see you.
Mhm.
So Bailey asks, how was the population only 8 in 1840? Bailey, that was population in thousands. So the California population was 8,000, and that was when it was under Mexican control. So those were those people were called Californios. The Californios were the Mexicans and former Spanish, now Mexican citizens who were living in California. So 8,000. Yeah, good question. Okay, well, Mr. Hahn, it's 7:38. We've been chatting now for over a half an hour, and I feel like we've gotten a lot accomplished. We've talked about some good things. I see we've got 20 people live right now. We've got Bailey, Alexa, Allie, Taylor. I think we still have Shivani, Chloe, RJ, Aiden, I think, Abby, Caitlin, Chloe, Rachel, Dylan, Brandon. So what other questions do you have?
Mm-hmm. Will we be on tomorrow to answer any questions? Yes and no, in a sense. We will be on Zoom tomorrow during the normal class time at 10:30, but we will be answering questions specifically to the exam. We will not be, answering the questions and like to give you all answers or anything like that, but we're going to be answering questions like if you're confused about a question, we can help you out on that. That's what we will be available for.
Perfect. Yeah, no content. We will not answer any content related questions tomorrow. We can answer them tonight. So tonight is a good time to ask those questions. But yeah, only like procedural questions or clarifying questions. If we had a question, if we wrote a question that was confusing, or if we accidentally did something, I mean, teachers make mistakes. So it's possible that we may have put it in a wrong multiple choice or something. So that's why we're going to be on call for that, just in case there was anything that was unclear about the test questions themselves. But yeah, otherwise we will not be answering any other academic questions. Nothing related to the content tomorrow. Good question, Taylor. Anything else? We've had some really good questions so far.
Come on, guys, this is your last opportunity to get maybe some information out of us on what's going to be on the test.
Alexa asks, will we get our test scores back? Yes, I am. I will set up the exam. Well, for you, Alexa, for your exam, and then the Edulastic, you should get your scores back immediately, except if we decide to do a short response. We have to, obviously, Mr. Han and I have to read those short responses, but everything else, the multiple choice portion, it will be scored immediately.
Yes.
And Sebastian says, are we allowed to retake this? True to my word, Mr. Ippolito has said before, and I will say it again, that yes, a retake is possible. It will not be a multiple choice retake. It will be a different, it'll be a written response retake. I don't know exactly what that's going to look like. We'll have more details on Friday. That would be the earliest that you could do the retake. And Mr. Han and I will be jumping on during office hours from 10:30 to 11 a.m. on Friday. And by then we will be able to make an announcement about what that retake will look like, because I know that there will be some students who may want to take that retake. Also, for any students who don't take the multiple choice tomorrow, the multiple choice is only open for one day, and that's tomorrow. So anybody who does not take the multiple choice retake tomorrow, the multiple choice test tomorrow, let me be clear, multiple choice test tomorrow, those students will also be doing the retake as well, the written retake. So so we'll have more details on that on Friday. Okay, let's see, now we have more questions coming in.
Yes.
Bailey says, are we able to email you questions during the exam? Bailey, as long as they are questions related to like clarifying questions, then that's fine. Bailey, just so we're really, really clear though, we are totally 100% available for immediate responses from 10:30 to noon. We're going to be on Zoom live from 10:30 to noon. If you're taking the test at like 7:30 p.m. tomorrow night after dinner, I can't guarantee, I'll do my best, but I can't guarantee that I'm going to reply to an email, like after hours. So that's why I'm really, really strongly encouraging everyone to please take the exam from 10:30 to noon. And I think, Mr. Han, I'm pretty sure we got this question answered already yesterday, but it's my understanding that in Edulastic, you can leave and then come back.
I think you can.
Yeah.
What was it? I'm not too sure. Please don't quote me on this, but like I am not like I don't use Edulastic on the regular, so I am unable to answer that. But I'm pretty sure you can. You can step away from it after you start it, so long as you come back and finish it before the deadline.
Yeah, so I think that's another good reason to go ahead and start the exam at 10:30 a.m. or as close to 10:30 as possible, because why not? That that time period is your allotted history time period, and if you decide, if it turns out that you need more time, or if you need it, you've been taking it for 45 minutes and you need to take a break, go to use the restroom, go outside and get some fresh air, lunch is, you're eating lunch early, whatever the case may be, you can take a break, step away from it, and then come back to it. But I would definitely I would definitely do it during that time period.
Mhm.
Okay. How much credit would we get if we do the retake? The retake, just like most other retakes, is going to be eligible for up to 80%,
Mhm.
up to 80% on the retake. So, which is, I think that's a pretty generous retake policy.
Beg
Taylor
pardon,
asked,
sir. You skipped a couple, I believe.
I did. I know.
Yeah.
I just noticed that. Taylor asked, is there going to be every single vocab word? Um,
Oh, that's my department, actually. I make the questions for the vocab portion of the test. I can tell you right now, Taylor, not every single vocab word is going to be on there, but that's a double-edged sword because yes, you don't have to study for all of the vocab words, but you're not going to know which one's going to show up. So it's a guessing game at this point.
Let me, if you are wondering for your study and preparation purposes, I know some of you are planners and you like to know about this kind of stuff. So you'll notice here we have 6 different sections. We've got mapping westward expansion, Oregon country, push-pull factors, Texas, the Mexican session, and vocab. And so you'll notice there are 6 different sections there. And what Mr. Hahn and I basically did was we divided it up. And we're going to have approximately, this is not a set in stone guarantee, but approximately 5 questions per section. So that is, that's kind of how those questions are divided up.
Mhm.
So if you're taking a look at the vocab and you're noticing, well, there are more than 5 vocab terms, then it's possible that not all the vocab terms are going to be tested. It's possible that Mr. Hahn may throw in 2 vocab terms into one. It's also possible that you might see, like, the knowledge, for example, 49th parallel. It's possible that the knowledge of the 49th parallel, that might not be in the vocab section, but it might end up being in the mapping westward expansion section because that also deals with the 49th parallel. So so there you go on that. Okay. Bailey said, oh, is the whole test on Edulastic? Yes, the whole
Yes.
test is going to be on Edulastic, and Alexa, for you, it'll all be on Google Form. Bailey, how much credit will we? Oh, we already answered that. Alexa, just confirming the test opens at 10:30. Yes, the test will open at 10:30 a.m. I will post it on Google Classroom. Well, no later than 10:30. It might be 10:15 or 10:20, but planning for no later than 10:30. And then Alexa says, I tried to Hangouts message you and I didn't get a reply. Alexa, I'm sorry, I never got the Hangout message. Alexa, I'm wondering if you accidentally messaged my father, who was also
Ooh.
Ron Ippolito, because I don't think he's also a Hart District employee and he would have no idea how to use Hangouts chat. So Alexa, it's possible that you may have Hangout messaged the wrong Ron Ippolito. Anne says, I did an Edulastic today and you are allowed to save and exit. That's a good thing. Anne, was that for math
Sweet.
class? I'm going to assume math. Alexa says, is the study guide graded? Yes, you are being graded based on how much of it did you complete. Mr. Hahn and I are not checking for the correct answers on every single question, just that you at least attempted to answer every single question.
Just another note to add, though, and what was it? Emphasis on the word attempt to answer the question. If a student writes, I don't know, or something of that derivative, that definitely will not count. That will actually lose points because that was definitely not an attempt. So.
Well, and also too, like we have been, and I think we made this clear yesterday, Mr. Hahn, that we did our review yesterday during class, and I think I made pretty clear that you can unsubmit it.
Oh,
you
yes.
can add, you can add to it, like, oh, now I've gotten those. I think Shivani, for example, I saw her message saying, hey, Mr. Ippolito, I hope it's okay. I took this back and I, filled in some spots that I wasn't quite sure on, and then I resubmitted. Yes, absolutely. I want you to do that. That's a good thing, because that shows that you're learning. Anne asks, is there a Quizlet? And the answer is no. There is no Quizlet, but you're certainly welcome to make a Quizlet tonight if you want.
She also confirms that her Edulastic today was for math. So,
nice.
sweet.
Nice. Okay. Anything else? Mr. Hahn, anything that we're Bailey says, if we unsubmit it, do we turn it back in? Oh, yes. Yes, for your study guide, if you unsubmit it. Mr. Hahn and I have not even checked those yet.
No,
So,
I plan on checking that on Friday with the remainder of this week's assignments. So for the students that were in period 4 before we went to distance learning, so long as you get it in before Friday, before Friday, then I'm not going to know any better.
Well, and there are no other assignments this week.
Oh yeah, that's right. So
It's-
get it in by Friday, y'all. Y'all know who you is. So.
Totally. Your job this week is to finish the study guide, study for the exam, take the exam, be well.
Mm-hmm.
Take care, be safe. That's your job this week. I'm going through, just kind of looking at our slides and just seeing. No, that's for everybody, Alexa.
Oh, I guess,
Go
yeah.
ahead. Yeah.
If you're taking that policy too, sir, then great minds think alike.
Yeah, well, I'll be checking them, but not marking anybody missing. I can wait till Friday.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that seems good. Okay. Well, unless there are any other questions, I'll kind of give it a little bit more time. There's certainly, there's no need to stretch it out if we've answered every.
In my absence, sir, did you go over the painting at all?
Oh my goodness. Thank you.
Well,
Okay, that'll be a good thing to end on here,
all
because
right.
I was talking about, let me jump back. Yes, there we go. Okay, so I did the Shivani's like, you are still going over the painting, right? Yes, thank you, Mr. Han, and thank you, Shivani. See, it was my birthday yesterday. I turned 45 years old and I start forgetting stuff.
Oh,
Okay.
age is just a number, sir, and it's also not an excuse.
Oh, Mr. Han, keeping me honest. Okay.
That's what I'm here for.
So this is the John Gass painting, and this is probably a good thing to end on. We actually got a chance to go over this in class. All students, we got a chance to go over this. So I think it's, and this was one of the very first things that we talked about. So I think it's probably just good, to kind of, review and kind of remember what these different elements symbolize here. In class, we talked about how this represents, I believe this is meant to represent Manhattan. I think this is the Hudson River right there. I think that's the East River there. I'm guessing that is maybe the Brooklyn Bridge right back there. Can you see my mouse pointer, Mr. Han?
Yes, sir, I can.
Okay. So this is the East over here. If the sun is over here in the East, then the sun is rising over here. It's still a little bit darker and more mysterious over here. If this is meant to be the East, then this would be the West. And so this would be the Pacific Ocean right here. These mountains, I'm guessing these are meant to represent the Rocky Mountains. And then, so that's just kind of the setting, right? And then you've got so much going on in this painting here. You've got the buffalo that are sort of running, they're fleeing out to the west. I'm not sure what creatures these are. These might be like deer that are running, maybe. You've got a wagon train back here with these covered wagons. They're coming out.
Sir, if I may interrupt, I believe those animals way in the background there that are also fleeing, I believe those are wild horses, sir.
Oh, wild horses. Okay.
Yes.
Well, I believe you. You've got Native Americans portrayed in different ways. You've got some Native Americans here who appear to be like dancing and sort of carefree, whereas you have these other Native Americans here who are kind of looking up in fear at the winged. Who did we say this was? Lady Freedom?
What was it? The national persona of Columbia, Lady Columbia.
Oh, okay. You'll notice that she has the book in her hand that says school book, and that she is stringing telegraph wires. I think also interesting to note her clothing, that she is kind of portrayed as maybe like a Greek or Roman goddess, or an angel, or some sort of what I don't want to say extraterrestrial. That's not the right word. Some sort of supernatural.
Deity, yes.
Yeah.
Deity,
So
yes.
yeah, for sure. You've got a few different railroads going here. You've got this one way in the back right here, and then kind of here in the middle distance, and then the train here. You have another covered wagon here, and then you have, if you zoom in, and I don't know if there's a way to zoom. I don't know if there's a way I can zoom here while I'm on Zoom. But I think I know of a way. So if I do John Gast American Progress, because there's another detail that I want to point out. And if I go to images and sure, here we go. Can I? Oh, you know what I want to do is I want to go to tools and I want a large resolution here.
I think that's the biggest one there is, actually, sir.
Is that the
you
one that's
click
on the? Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so open image in new tab, and but she's just just a little one.
Oh, you're gonna have to go to the web page first and then
I will.
click through there.
I will do that. Okay. There we go. Okay, now we're in business. Okay, so now I can go ahead and zoom in because I wanted to.
Click on it one more time and you'll get the full resolution.
Oh my. All right. Slowly loading. Okay. Click. There we go. This is what I wanted. So if you take a look here, this very, very clearly says the words overland mail. And if you recall, we actually, in the slideshow yesterday, we looked at one of the maps where it had, I'm going to go back here now, and I'm going to go back. I just have to go back in time to my maps. A lot of good stuff here in this slideshow.
Mm-hmm.
We made a good slideshow, you and I, Mr. Han. Let's go back to one of the maps, and I think it's back towards the beginning. Oh, I know it's towards the beginning because it's when I talked about the maps. Okay, and I'm going to go full screen on this. And from St. Louis, it swings down and through Texas, and then through El Paso, which is right on the western edge of Texas, through Tucson, which it was back then was in New Mexico territory, today is in Arizona, and then crosses the Colorado River right here, and then comes up to Los Angeles, and then all the way up to San Francisco. That was and let me go ahead and I'll switch back now. Let's exit here and go back. So there it is. So the Butterfield Overland Mail Route, that traveled all the way from St. Louis. Instead of going the Oregon Trail route, I'll stop the share now just so they can see our faces. That kind of dipped south and went to LA and then all the way up to San Francisco. The Overland Mail, like that was a big deal because this is before, this was in the 1840s, 1850s, early 1860s. They had in the 1860s also the Pony Express, but to have mail, like today we take it for granted. We take the United States Postal Service for granted. And we just, because, it's mail, who cares? Big deal. But back then, the mail, this was before FedEx, this is before UPS, this is before Amazon Prime, the van pulls up to your house. There was one delivery service for a very long time in this country. It is constitutionally authorized, and that was the United States Postal Service, the U.S. Mail. And this was a lifeline for people. They could get messages from family members on the East Coast. They would get packages. So this is the start of mail order service where you could actually look through a catalog. It was like the Amazon.com of the 1800s. You would look through a catalog and you would say, oh, I want this. And then you would send money you would send your money, and then they would send you your product via the mail. It would take sometimes weeks or months for you to get your product. It's not like, Amazon Prime, you get it in a couple days.
Mm-hmm.
But the mail was a really big deal.
Oh yeah.
And so that's why if you go, and again, I take every opportunity I can, Mr. Han, to talk about our California historical landmark trip. But these are, if you take a look along the route from Los Angeles, from the eastern part of California, from Los Angeles and up to San Francisco, there are these Butterfield overland mail stops along the way where that was where the mail would be dropped off. So, and then, today, of course, we take for granted again that your mail is just delivered right to your home.
Mm-hmm.
Back then, your mail would be delivered to one location within your community. It might have been a general store, or it might have been, the idea of a post office. Those were just springing up in the late 1800s. So
Mm-hmm.
your mail might be delivered. Abraham Lincoln, as a matter of fact, the general store that he worked at when he was a young man, that was where people would go to pick up their mail
Mm-hmm.
in in Springfield, Illinois. Anyway, okay, so
If I can, sir, I'd like to say that I myself have personally felt the importance of the mail, and I definitely realized at the time that I took it for granted, because when I went into the Army, the one thing they do in basic training is they take away your cell phone, because you're not supposed to have any unauthorized contact with the outside world while you're going through training. So the only mode of communication that I had with my family was via the mail. And let me tell you, when mail call came around every day, and when when I didn't get a letter, it kind of pinged me a little. It kind of hurt a little bit, seeing how everybody else get their mail, and I'm just sitting there looking at the mailbag, hoping something's going to be coming my way. So I will say that whenever a letter or a package did come through, it was definitely just a momentous occasion. It was just felt the feeling, just all sorts of feelings welling up inside. It was great. I actually have all the letters that my family sent me right here, saved away. I can't believe I remember where exactly it was in my desk right next to me. But yeah, the mail, that's one thing we always take for granted. But once you miss it, once you lose every other form of communication, that's what you look forward to the most.
Well, that's awesome. Mr. Hunt, did you just have that like laying around, or did you
Well,
go
I
get
specifically saved the letters. What was it? This was like back in 2012 when these were mailed out. So I saved the letters, definitely brought them home and left them here. And I left them in a desk drawer. I believe it was back in 2013 when I graduated basic training, came back home on leave. And while we were talking about the mail and how it was and its function as it was back in the 19th century, that kind of got me thinking, like, hey, didn't we kind of experience something like this? I'm like, wonder if I, and I looked right in the desk drawer right next to me, and there it was.
Sure enough, what a coincidence.
Mm-hmm.
All right, well, hey, since we got a couple minutes, actually it's 8:01, but for Anne Sebastian, we'll go ahead and we will talk about it. She asked, did you already explain the importance of the slave and free state balance in the U.S. government? I know that I talked about it on this slide here yesterday. Mr. Hahn, did you also talk about that?
I touched on it a little bit because it was in I touched on it a little bit in at the end of my Texas slides, I believe it was.
Got it.
Why did the United States wait so long to annex Texas into the United States?
Yeah, well, and that was and of course the reason was because of this. It was really a touchy subject, this trying to maintain this balance, because there was this and we're going to learn more about this in our next unit starting next week, but it's a word called sectionalism. It is the idea that people increasingly in the 1830s, 1840s, 1850s are identifying themselves by the section of the country that they live in. And so there's this increased sectional tension. I want to say that very carefully, sectional tension between the North and the South. So if you take a look at this slide right here, you'll notice that, in 1789, when the country was first started and we kind of, we had our first president first president George Washington under the Constitution, there were 8 slave states in the United States and only 5 free states. By 1800, the balance there was a little bit more of a balance. And then by 1821, we were balanced at 12 apiece. In 1837, we were balanced at 13 apiece. And so then we get to, 1836 was when the Texas Revolution happened, right? And so during that time, there was a perfect balance. It was 12 and 12. And then in 1836, when Texas declared themselves independent and had the Texas Revolution, the Alamo, Battle of San Jacinto, you remember that whole thing. And they're like, hey, we should become part of the United States now. And the United States was like, whoa, this is not going to work, because if you take a look at the map here, in 1836, Arkansas was already preparing to be admitted as a slave state. And that in keeping with that balance, Michigan in 1837 was about ready to be admitted shortly thereafter to once again maintain that balance at 13 apiece. So if we take a look at this next slide here, there we go. So you see what happens is in 1845, when it finally happened, not only was Texas admitted as a slave state, but Florida was also admitted as a slave state in the same year, and that threw the balance off. So by 1845, you have 13 free states and you have 15 slave states. Now, I think shortly thereafter, Iowa is going to be admitted as a free state. I'm pretty sure Iowa was like 1846 or 1847. Excuse me. But there was constantly this balance. And who asked? It was Anne who asked this. And if you're wondering, why is this important? I'm going to stop sharing my screen so I can look right at you and tell you this. And for everybody who's still watching, this is why it's important. The United States Senate. We talked about this previously, didn't we, Mr. Hahn? The power of the Senate. The United States Senate is extraordinarily powerful. The United States Senate, you remember, they ratify treaties. They approve all judicial nominations of the president, including justices to the Supreme Court. If you have been following politics like I have over the past 3 years, you know that there has been President Trump has been, because he has had a Republican Senate now for the past almost 3.5 years, he has been very productive at appointing very conservative federal judges and conservative justices, and Democrats, more progressive and liberal parts of the country are just going crazy because the president is working in cooperation with the Republican-led Senate, and he is getting a lot of these judicial appointments through. So the Senate is extraordinarily powerful when it comes to that power of approving presidential appointments. So the power of the Senate, you can't underestimate it. And the Senate, not to mention the fact that the Senate is half of Congress, right? So if you're going to have any bills passed, it is not based on population in the Senate. It is strictly based on, equality of the states. Every state is worth 2 senators each. So it doesn't matter whether you're, today the least populous state is Wyoming. They've got, 700,000 people. Or you're California. California, we have like 30 million people, 32 million people. California gets 2 senators. Wyoming gets 2 senators. So that's why it was so, it was really, really touchy. Every time if there's going to be a slave state, well, the free states would get upset. And if there's going to be another free state, then the slave states would get upset. So it really, this sectionalism, this tension kept rising until finally you get to 1860. And that is what is going to the election of Abraham Lincoln, when not a single Southern state voted and gave any electoral votes to Abraham Lincoln. That is really what broke. We're going to learn about this in just a couple of weeks. That's what finally broke the South. And they're like, no more. They felt totally disenfranchised. They felt totally powerless because the South literally had no say at all. They cast 0 electoral votes for Abraham Lincoln, and Abraham Lincoln ended up winning the election of 1860 anyway. And so that was when they left, they seceded, and then the Civil War began. All right, Mr. Hahn. Whew. Well, it is now 8:07, and we not only answered everyone's questions, I think, but we went even further than that. So any final words, Mr. Hahn, before we sign off on the YouTube live here?
Get a good night's sleep. We're gonna have a good test tomorrow. It's gonna be a really good one. I'm gonna tell you right now. We wrote it, so
I'm excited. All right. So on behalf of Mr. Hahn and myself, Mr. Ippolito, thank you so much for joining us, and we'll look forward to seeing you bright and early, although really 10:30 a.m. is not that early, and you will have already had English by then. But we'll be on the Zoom. We'll be in our Zoom classroom starting at 10:30. We'll also release. You don't ever have to see us if you don't want to, but if you just want to check in and say hello, but we're going to be releasing that exam at 10:30 a.m. tomorrow. So good luck, and have a good test tomorrow.